Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
So welcome back to the Think Factory podcast, powered by OGC Solutions. And I'm your host today, Chris Santamassimo from OGC Solutions. And we're here on a sunny August afternoon with, in my estimation, is a pretty impressive podcast, thanks to the two folks that are here today from the BOBST group. I have Harold Leete and Doug Herr. So welcome to the live Think Factory podcast in our studio.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
Oh, it's
Great
fantastic.
to meet you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the
time. It's a pleasure. I mean, everybody in packaging knows the BOBST group, so I'm just flattered that you guys took some time out of your schedule to come visit the podcast and talk about what's new and different in the industry as well as at BOBST. So thanks so much.
Well, it sounds great. It works out very well. We're so close. We're only a couple of miles up the road here in Parsippany.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate the invitation to come over.
Oh, it's terrific.
Yeah, it worked out real well. We're both here today at the same time, so timing
Which doesn't happen that much.
No, timing couldn't have been better.
Exactly. Well, you guys are, let's focus on you guys for a minute. I mean, what's interesting about the two of you is that you're sort of passing a baton, and Harold is, I'm looking at Doug. Doug is passing the baton, and Harold is receiving the baton when it comes to the senior sales responsibilities here in the U.S. So talk a little bit about, yourselves, your background, and what's happening on that side of the house, too.
Okay, so basically I've been fortunate enough to have 47 years with BOBST, fresh out of college. Joined the BOBST organization in sales support, worked my way up through sales in various positions, various sales territories, various responsibilities. And after so many years, figured it was time to somewhat hang it up and move on in my life. Harold had worked with us previously. He had handled the New England sales territory. And when I decided to retire from BOBST, Harold had joined another organization, and I wanted to bring him back. I knew he'd be a great addition in his new role as Director of Sales.
Terrific. So you got pulled back into the organization.
Yeah, and I actually couldn't be more appreciative of my career at BOBST because of working for Doug. I came from a printing background, so I actually used to be a press operator one time. I worked my way up the ladder selling consumables and then capital equipment. And then back in 2007, my career took an interesting turn. And actually a headhunter approached me. And I met Doug for the first time. Doug lives in Connecticut. And actually an area of Connecticut I was very familiar with, too. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had a little bit of common interest. And, when the interview process with Doug kind of took a little bit of time. And it was very rewarding, too. So when I came on board with BOBST in 2007, I didn't know anything about the packaging industry. Mm-hmm. Working with Doug and a couple other key players at the company, I not only learned a lot about the business, I grew a passion for it too. It's a great organization with an outstanding group of people here too. And so I was with BOBST from that time period, like Doug said, from 2007 to 2013. And I went to work for another company leading their digital folding carton printing. And I was there for almost 11 years. And Doug and I kept in touch through the years, too. We used to cross paths all the time. And when I got the call, I was actually shocked because I didn't think Doug would ever retire. He's been here, as he said, 47 years.
Yep.
And everybody knows Doug. Very well respected in the industry. And we sat down and talked for quite a while. And, I couldn't have been more honored to get the call that he would want me to come and, be his successor. And since I've come on board, Doug has been great to work with, and it's just like we didn't skip a beat.
I bet.
So it's been a lot of fun again, too.
Well, for a fine organization, too. I mean, as I understand it, BOBST is 140-plus years old. Family-owned, right, in Germany?
Actually in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Harold indicated that he did not know what the BOBST business industry was when he joined the organization, and actually the same thing occurred when I first interviewed with BOBST. No clue what they did, but when I walked through the offices and met the people, I embraced the culture immediately. I could just see that it was a group of individuals who loved what they did and seemed to get along extremely well and did have that passion for the same goal, and it was tremendous. And that's why after all these years, I never left. I'd been enticed by others, and just continued along that same path, which was great.
Well, it's an impressive company. I mean, I've seen BOBST over the years with the full range of products, but products that I've just about every manufacturer in the market. If you talk to enough people, you'll find a lot of fans and a couple of not so fans. I have never heard anybody say anything negative about BOBST. To be honest, talked to lots of folks that know it and use the equipment, and just a great reputation. And apparently, it filters its way into the culture of the company too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. And actually, one of the first things when I went out in the field working with, and actually when I first started, I think it was the first week after my onboarding back at the time it was Roseland, New Jersey, I went to one of our customers in New England. Doug actually had me go there, shadow the finishing department people. And you remember it was our friends at Hub Folding Box. So I was there for a good week. And the finishing manager at the time said, you're coming into a good organization. One of the things I can tell you that you'll probably hear when you travel around, nobody ever got fired for buying a BOBST. And it's actually a very common statement that you hear out there because of, the reputation of the company and the type of products that we support for the industry. And
Right.
And I learned that pretty quickly going out in the field, just seeing many customers right away. And it was a proud feeling to know that you're selling something that the customers are really happy to have and look forward to getting into their productivity for their operations too.
Right.
And we're just not in the folding carton industry. BOBST as an organization, we're involved in all segments of packaging, whether it's flexible materials or labels, narrow web, or corrugated. We're very much involved, and our goal is to continue to grow in all of the segments moving forward.
Right.
So.
Well, you got an exciting product line and a couple of newcomers to that product line, especially as you get toward September, which is the trade show season. Would love to hear. Let's just keep it loose and talk about what are you seeing in the industry and what is BOBST. Maybe some previews on some of the things that BOBST is going to announce at the trade shows, things that are coming down the pike. Let's take it away and talk about what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, we actually, as you know, we just came off of Drupa actually, and we got the trade show season coming up in September. Drupa was a big moment for BOBST. This was an interesting one because if you take a look at the trends from Drupa from 2000 to 2024, there's been a steady decline in the amount of attendance at Drupa. But what we found too is the people that came to Drupa were serious buyers.
Yep.
Now, this was the first time we ever took this moment at Drupa into scalability. We didn't bring equipment. And it was questioned by a lot of customers. And when, Doug, talked to me about coming back on board, one of the first things he made me aware of, we're not going to have equipment this Drupa. And, it was a surprise to me because I've been to Drupa before. But I also realized too, okay, we're reinventing ourselves. So how do we rethink when customers approach us at Drupa? And we had 12 VIP booths with connections to all of our factories, whether they were for corrugated, folding carton, label, or flexible packaging. We were able to connect to any of the factories throughout the world and do live demos. And one of the things that brought to the table for us, we could do live demos without people climbing all over the machines. You could have a personalized one-on-one. You could go over features. You could go over the connectivity that we offer. And I took full advantage of it. We had, we can't say what the numbers were, but we had our busiest Drupa ever. And to the shock of everybody, we didn't have equipment. But that was our best show ever, and it was the lowest attendance for a Drupa that we've seen since 2000. So it really was a big success with the trade shows.
Well, maybe you hit the mark doing something a little bit different outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody in past years can't wait to bring their entire fleet to Drupa, right?
Which is extremely expensive.
Right.
Extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. Also, BOBST over the last, I'd say, decade, we've changed our philosophy somewhat, whereby we used to target Drupa as the introduction of many new pieces of equipment. So it applied a lot of pressure to our R&D departments because they had that point in time where the equipment had to be ready to show, to exhibit. And really we realized that we were smarter to spread out the introduction of equipment as it was available and ready to go to market. We could actually present it to the market. And one of the examples is our Nova Foil. relatively new hot foil stamping machine, which we introduced a couple of years ago. Instead of waiting 2 more years to show it at the Drupa, we were able to introduce it to the marketplace a lot earlier. So
Yes.
that's more of our philosophy.
Yeah, so the introductions aren't rushed. At the same time, they're not delayed.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of hot foil stamping, we were talking before the podcast recording about how the market's changed a little bit. I mean, I know a couple of years ago, hot stamping was really not in vogue or less in vogue than it had been in past years. Some people had some concerns about maybe recyclability, et cetera, but it was really not what it is. But now you're seeing a resurgence of it too, I hear.
Yeah, you see, because, there was a big push for sustainability, but also cold foil came into play. And, cold foil had certain benefits and advantages, but it's got some disadvantages as well, too. And so with the influx of that coming into play, we saw a decline in hot foil stamping, presses being ordered, or hot foil stampers being ordered from us. So when I left in 2013, we had very few hot foil stamping machines in North America being ordered. Now that I've come back in 2024, I can take a look. The entire time I was at BOBST, we've seen more orders just in this 4-month time I've been back than I did while I was here the entire 7 years previously.
Yeah.
And because, talking earlier, sustainability isn't an issue for hot foil stamping because the method of removing foil from the board with the separations for recyclability is there. So there's no issue with sustainability. It's actually very accepted. And the brands and the manufacturers still like the look of hot foil stamping. So you want an added effect on your packaging on the market. Hot foil stamping gives you a look that cold foil can give you a good look, but not like the look of a hot foil impact on a board.
Yeah, they complement each other extremely well.
They
There's
do.
a place for cold foil. There's a place for hot foil, as well as today digital decorating. There's a place there. So I'd say moving forward, as all 3 technologies improve, I suspect that there'll be a place in the market for all 3 of them.
Right, to your point, just based on whatever the particular carton wants to look like, or
Whatever the
particular
need is.
printed work. But it's so important, I think, as we were talking about, as you're trying to demonstrate a product or a brand identity, the consistency and the appearance and the tactile sensitivity all sort of come together in creating an experience, which is what the BOBST equipment enables a producer to do.
Yeah, we're not just printing. We're actually doing the die cutting. We're doing the embossing. We're doing the foil stamping and the folding of the product. And the result is, a higher end brand wants to have a package on the shelf that has curb appeal. A consumer goes down an aisle and sees the package. The package draws their attention. Doesn't matter what's inside. It's what the package look like.
Right.
And going back to what you said too, and Doug had mentioned, there's a place for everywhere for the stamping. Hot foil, cold foil, other applications, just like in the printing process. When I was in the digital world, a lot of players were out there saying that digital is going to take over everything. No, when you look at it, gravure is still out there. Flexible packaging or flexible printing is still out there. Offset sheet fed is still out there. And again, digital is still out there, but no one technology is taking over it all. Each one is application dependent. And we're seeing that with our, hot foil stamping business and the increase.
Yeah, the other thing, Harold, relative to hot foil stamping is the fact that from time to time there's a pressure on reducing costs of packaging where customers or the end consumer, end user, maybe pushes back on the cost of a product, but packaging per se is such a small portion of the cost of the overall product. The advantage of having embossment, of having hot foil stamping, having graphics which will attract the customers, the end consumer's attention is huge. So it seems to come back to that in order to obtain the shelf appeal, there is an escalation of the quality of the graphics and something new which will attract the end user.
Very true.
So
Yeah, and you see it in the higher end products like the beauty and healthcare, the cosmetics, and the spirits industry, especially, we talked about earlier, the whiskey and bourbon industry. You're seeing a lift in that industry, and the added value of the packaging and even the labels really has an impact on, the product that's inside there.
Well, it's so saturated, right? I mean, How are you going to stand out to a liquor retailer if you have a boring label that's not embossed or doesn't have any tactile sensation to it, or a not so great box? People are just not going to notice it. You'll just blend into the background like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, you remember back years ago, we're all old enough to remember when generic brands first came out. Do you remember what colors they were?
White.
Exactly. And, it didn't really have an impact on the market. Now, if you go to the supermarket, they have their own brands, and their brands look like mainstream brands that you could see from the consumer good companies out there. So, it's shelf appeal. So that white board with black type saying it's cereal didn't have the impact that they thought it would, even with the lower cost.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the percentage of the market which that appeals to is very small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody who just doesn't care. They want the popped rice instead of the Rice Krispies, but people are still looking for value, and there's a perception, I think, that if your package is good, what's inside must be okay too.
Very much so.
Right, yeah.
That's huge. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even though, and it may be the same product, right? Mm-hmm. Even in my example, the Rice Krispies that you get in the pretty blue box with the little whoever those characters are, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, might be the same stuff you're buying in a generic box, but you got to think it's just as good. That's really what packaging is all about.
Oh, yeah.
I just think the psychology around packaging is so interesting. And it's really the BOBST equipment that brings it to life, in a sense, that enables the artist or the designer the ability to put on media, put on board what they're trying to accomplish from a whole brand perspective.
Yeah, more than 50% of the consumer products out there that you see on the shelves are produced on BOBST equipment in the finishing side. And we have a big impact in the industry, but understanding the industry we're in is very important as well, too.
No doubt.
And what you said earlier, too, going back into the brands, we had to go before Drupa, because we didn't have equipment on the floor. We had training at what we call the IMD Academy. We all had to go to Switzerland for a week. And it was a great impact. And one of the professors at the academy talked about a case study in packaging. And a perfect example was an impact with a minor brand trying to grow. We all know the personal care market for the men, razor blades, dominated by two major players for years. All of a sudden, through social media and good packaging, new players came into the market. And with my previous employer, one of the case studies I did was for a razor blade manufacturer. And I saw the razor blades on social media, on Facebook. And being an interested consumer, I'm like, I'd like to see what this is all about and see if it's a good product. Well, really what appealed to me was the packaging. It looked like nostalgic old razor blade boxes with hot foil stamping on it, and it caught my attention. Then part of that case study that I did was when that brand came out, only two men founded the company. They started up with nothing. They grew the business, and they ended up, within less than 10 years, they sold it to one of the major players. They sold it for over $1 billion.
That crazy.
So the packaging and the impact of social media really had a major impact on that brand. So again, a small little company was able to tackle the big guys by the packaging product that they offer.
It's about how do you get noticed? The Dollar Shave Club was one of the companies that I always thought was interesting, not only because of their packaging too, but the psychology around their other advertising. They needed to be seen, and they did it through humor. And then that humor made it, that translated into the interesting packaging. And all of a sudden you had a huge company. I think they were bought by Gillette at one time or another.
Yeah, the other one I mentioned was Harry's Razors.
Harry's, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so they, those were two major brands they went up against, that we all knew that nobody thought you could crack the shell on that. And they wound up being consumed by those two major brands because of the success they had, too.
Yep. And to your point about the packaging and that perception of value. And by the way, they're great. I mean, they're great products. Who knows if they're any better than the other ones, but they got noticed.
Yeah.
Thanks to the packaging. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of consumers don't really appreciate how they're being positively influenced by the packaging. They think, it's the package. It's one of the first things you discard when you get a product. But that whole psychology behind the buying choice and the perception of value, to me, is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And your equipment at BOBST enables you to bring it to life, like I said. What besides the hot foil stamping that you were a little surprised about, what else is going on in the marketplace that's interesting, and how is BOBST responding?
I think one of the big things we see in the market, there's a big push with digital. And I came from a world where folding carton was trying to make a big push into that space. But when COVID came about, really, it was more about productivity and efficiencies. And so traditional assets and finishing really took a big play in that and continue to dominate that part of the industry, where digital is still trying to get their foothold in there, but it really doesn't provide the productivity and the speed requirements that the companies are looking for. But there is a place for it. But what we saw was really efficiencies. And Doug was here through BOBST during the COVID times, and at times we couldn't keep up with the demand of what the productivity requirements in the market were looking for. And we were looking at longer turnaround times and delivery times because of that. But it's really, the industry is all about efficiencies. And going back to Drupa, one of the things that we also had, other than the VIP booths, was expert tables. So at the expert tables, we had people that trained to work each one. And we had different areas of our products that offered unique efficiencies that we hadn't offered in the past. And they were all very well received. The one piece of equipment, if you want to call it, we had was called the digital inspection table. And boy, that table was busy every day, showing how we can inspect creasings. We even had a device on there where we put a euro bill on the table. We could measure the size of the engraving lines. It was that precise. And it was really an eye-opener. And a couple of the team members that we have here at BOBST were a little skeptical about it because they hadn't seen it. So one team member in particular, I said, one of our customers that came to Drupa just was for his cosmetic business. This was a huge asset for the business and the brands that they work with. I said, why don't you ask your customer what you saw in that? And right away the customer says the first thing is to eliminate dial vinyls was huge. Mm-hmm. And he goes to what we can take a PDF, go right there and work with the sheet with the customer right there and provide all the detail they need. And we can validate everything in the cutting, stamping, and foil stamping that was required for it, that gave them a level of what you'd call certification, I guess, that the product coming out was going to be exactly what they expected.
Right.
And it really lent well. And the other things, too, is the inspections in line on the gluers.
Correct. AccuCheck.
The new generation AccuCheck is huge. Being able to inspect in line, have printed reports for the brands, gave the brand something that didn't require human eyes looking at and going through all the time. If we could validate every package came out, was perfect for them. That met the brand's requirements, and it really helped our end customers give something to the brands that they couldn't give before with human eyes.
Well, think about the contribution towards your efficiency. If you can automate the efficiency, and the automated solution keeps up with the press, I mean that's a winning combination, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and today that's a buzzword, automation, because of the issue with labor in obtaining proper labor to operate equipment. Today we're seeing more and more need for automation on equipment. For instance, on the folder gluers, automation on the front end of the folder gluer, automation on the back end of the folder gluers is something that we hear about on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Are you seeing robotics really start to take on that role?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And in fact, BOBST just recently made an acquisition of a robotics company which had predominantly been involved in the corrugated industry, but quickly were adapting many of their offerings to the folding carton market. But we see tremendous opportunities. And that's another area where BOBST continues to expand, to grow, as we make other acquisitions, which are complementary to the packaging segments. So,
yeah, when you talk about robotics, not only are you getting the efficiency, but my mind always goes to risk management. How can we minimize some risks like workplace injuries? So if you can prevent the events that give rise to back injuries and other things that people experience when they try and lift too much, et cetera, or take some of that repetitive stress out of a job, mm-hmm. you probably have a happier, more productive employee and an employee that doesn't get hurt very often.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
The cost to an organization is huge. Carpal tunnel and some of the other injuries, such as you say with back injuries, it's tremendous.
I also like to think that those solutions, it's not that we want to replace people, but more importantly, we want to make their jobs a little bit more interesting or easier in a good way, right? So you get to elevate people to do things that they wouldn't have had time to do otherwise. They can use their brain more than their hands, so to speak.
Well, and I would say most companies aren't looking to replace labor. They definitely have opportunities and more advantageous opportunities for the employees within the company. It's a question of how does the industry or industries attract new labor into a manufacturing setting. It's not so easy today.
No, it's not. But I think though, a facility that's got some of the interesting technology in place, and you've got, some of these routine tasks automated. It's a lot more attractive to a candidate, and it's probably a lot more attractive to folks that are coming out of college doing engineering, for example. They're more interested to do things that, were more sort of tech oriented than the old style iron presses.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of our clients use the BOBST name and the fact that they have BOBST equipment or new BOBST equipment within their companies to attract labor to join them.
Interesting.
It's ironic you say that too, because Doug and I see the same thing because we're traveling about. Even though Doug is retired officially, he's not. He's out there working pretty hard, supporting the team, and I couldn't imagine doing this without Doug here by my side. We've been a great team. But one of the things we see out in the field is somebody I saw the other day. We talked about that. I said, I know this sounds self-serving, but you've got, 25-year-old gluers here. You've got 26-year-old, 30-year-old cutters, stampers. How is it attracting younger people to want to work on that older equipment? He goes, it's tough. I said, the companies that are successful attracting younger people that really get interested in the business, they have the newer equipment, and the younger kids are attracted to it. And as I told you earlier, I came from the printing industry. Well, I was fortunate. My mother, I was not an academic student going through high school, and it wasn't my thing. But my mother paid attention to my education. My sophomore year, I was taking a program called Industrial Arts, and it wasn't going to get me anywhere. And I still, it's ironic, even after all these years, I still remember the guidance counselor was Mr. Tringali. My mother used to go and visit every so often with me to make sure I was on the right track. He said, Harold really belongs into a vocational program. Why don't we take him around the school and take a look at the programs, see if there's something of interest? Well, where I grew up in Everett, Massachusetts, we got a grant from the state for all new equipment for all the different vocational departments. So I went through, and the department that caught my attention was the graphic arts. They had a brand new, at the time, a Heidelberg GTO, a Heidelberg cord, a Polar cutter, brand new, a brand new state-of-the-art camera with the big bellows for making film, because back then you used big sheets of Kodak film.
Sure.
And I looked at that. I said, this is what I want to do. But they also had, back then, computer graphic edit writers for the first generation photo typesetters. That's what attracted me to it. And I finally got my first A in school when I took vocational. And it was because it was something of interest to me. And I got the first job that came about working in Boston. And, it was because of something that was newer technology and encouraged me to get in. I can tell you, if it was older technology, like the old Harris presses that, were beat up, I would have never been interested in that.
Well, wouldn't have caught your eye.
No, and it's the same thing in our industry. You want to attract younger people to get into the business. It's the equipment you offer them to work on will attract them to come in.
Yeah, and the use of technology, the interfaces, using data to improve efficiency and how the equipment runs, but also I think the artistic side of it as well. I mean, I don't have to tell you, Harold. I mean, artists are the ones that come up with the concepts, and the folks that work on the BOBST equipment are the ones that put it into or bring it to life, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So you've got all these different vocations that come together in a pretty amazing way, I think, and that's one of the things that's always attracted me to print and packaging as well.
That's true, and you see a lot of people in the industry. We go out there, and we have to deal with owners selling equipment, but we're also on the floor talking to people operating the equipment. And these operators have a lot of passion. They want to show you what they've done and some of the work. They open up their drawers and show us some of these unique things, and they're excited about it. And it really makes the industry a lot of fun when you see that kind of excitement. It's not just a job; it's a passion, and you see that with the customers out there we work with a lot of times we're out there.
Yeah, if you walk into their offices, the ones that have offices, they've got shelves full of the packaging, the complicated stuff.
Yeah,
because that's always the most. The most enriching, I guess, right?
Which they're proud of, right?
Yeah, they should
took
be.
some effort.
We've got a good finishing house here in New Jersey that we go visit, and you should see the shelf of some of the beautiful foil stamp thing they do. And
gorgeous.
every time I go into the office, I'm always looking at it in awe. I'm like, they do beautiful work, but they take a lot of pride in what they do.
Yep. Yeah, if people only, people, that is, people outside print and packaging understood the complexity of what it's like to get a piece of media into a three-dimensional box, printed the right way with the foil stamping and the embellishing. I don't know. I wish people understood it a little bit more.
Well, I think a big part of it is how many people take packaging for granted. Unless you're in the industry, I mean, I didn't know packaging existed until I joined the industry, and that's the way it is with most people. Friends of mine, when I discuss what I do, or new acquaintances discuss what I do in my career, and it's like, oh, I never thought about packaging before, and we do all take it for granted.
We do. You still go to stores and open up glue lines to see how to make it?
Absolutely. That's the best part.
That's getting crazy.
Oh my God, that's awesome. So, but I'd like to go back to, you were fortunate to have a mom and to have that opportunity to find out what you were attracted to and what you really ended up loving, because I mean, we all know that's one of the issues today, that there's an industry really enticing a lot of kids to go to college that really shouldn't be going to college to learn, to become book smart, when they really are great at being plumbers and electricians and graphic arts, printing pressmen and things like that. And we need those trades, and those trades are extremely lucrative. But, there's another agenda for pushing kids into college, and I think it's just overdone.
Yeah, I
agree.
More. But giving them options like you had.
Exactly.
With the sexy equipment and somebody who knew how to teach you is what got your interest. So
it really did.
You were lucky.
Yeah, and something too. I was just I was at the factory recently, because one of the things I wanted to do after Drupa was spend a week at the factory going over some of the newer things since I've been gone. And our old in May we have our old corporate headquarters, the old building.
Right.
Well, that's our apprentice building, and it was to my surprise, I didn't realize this because I didn't remember from before, or it's a new program. We train in Switzerland 200 apprentices a year in that facility.
Wow.
So we bring in young kids, train them, and they could go globally anywhere in the world to support our equipment. And I'd like to see more programs like that in this country, because I think it would be beneficial overall for everybody.
Well, it's a heck of an investment.
It is.
Right, which a lot of companies, unfortunately, aren't willing to do.
Right.
But thankfully, BOBST is.
Yeah, some schools do so, like Clemson University has a program, graphic arts. There's some others. But in general, over the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of conversation about this is what we need, but it seems to be very difficult to obtain the traction to get some of these programs started. And part of it is the cost and the length of time it takes to educate an individual, and people sticking with it, kids sticking with it. So
and actually that's probably one of the biggest things is what you said, kids sticking with it, their ability to stay. They've very short-term attention spans.
Well, thanks to the phone, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Even us adults can have that from time to time, too.
Yeah, I know one individual that's really has that issue. But it can be good.
It can be good.
Strong social media skills, that's important.
Indeed. What are some of the things we ought to expect to see coming from BOBST this year at the shows?
So we've got, as you know, Label Expo's coming up, and we've got Print United. This year, and unfortunately, we won't have anything going at Print United because of our commitment to Label Expo. But we've got some new technology that we'll be discussing and showing. We actually did have on the floor at Drupa our DM55, our digital label press, narrow wide label, that is a modular design. It has inkjet, it has flexible units on it for printing. It also can be converted to do inline die cutting, hot foil stamping. So it can actually do labels as well as folding carton. It can go up to 24-point board.
Wow.
So it's a very versatile product for the marketplace, and we're starting to get some very good traction on it too. And people recognize BOBST for a lot of things that we do in the industry, and this is one right here that I think people are going to start taking notice of very soon.
It probably makes sense to mention the Competence Center down in Alpharetta.
Yeah. And actually, we actually just recently had, in fact, just before I started, Doug and I actually had a meeting down south, and going over, we actually, I got reintroduced to the team who I work with prior, and one of the team members right away said, "When are we going to have a team meeting?" And I thought that was great. So we actually we set up the team meeting at our Competence Center in Alpharetta, Georgia. When I was here previously, we didn't have that. The Competence Center was set up for the narrow, wide label and the flexible packaging space. But we can use it for all of our customers, for all the verticals we support. And we've actually hired an extensive group of people there. In fact, you got to meet Michael Cox, I believe, down there for the first time. He runs the Competence Center. He came from another company, actually, where I worked previously. Michael has done a phenomenal job in that Competence Center, and all of my team members really couldn't stop raving about the support he gave. But we also want to use it for some of the associations we're involved with, like the IADD, if we have meetings and things like that. And we don't have any folding carton equipment in there today, but doesn't mean we won't in the future. We also actually have a West Coast Competence Center, too. It's actually attached to one of our certified die makers. We have one of what we call our NovaCut 106ER there and a Vision Fold. And we run training programs. In fact, a customer in the Northeast that bought 2 machines from us at Drupa, they're going to be their first blanking die cutter technology. We're actually having them going out to the West Coast training facility for a week to train before the new equipment comes in. So we're taking advantage of all the resources we have. And even though we don't have Roseland, New Jersey anymore like we used to, that means we think outside the box and we do things that work out the way we need them to still.
It sounds like you just coined a phrase there.
Outside the
For
box.
BOBST, yeah.
Outside the box. Inside and outside.
Yeah.
So actually, last week when I was out on the West Coast, out in LA for the week, I visited the new Competence Center out there, and it shows extremely well. And in fact, we had a company in there, 3 or 4 individuals who were receiving training on the NovaCut blanker at that time. So it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you got a chance to see it. I haven't yet. I'm looking forward to going out there and seeing the facility. And we are going to have an open house there in November. So we'll send notifications out to a lot of our customers, and we'll be showcasing the facility really for the first time.
Oh, terrific. That's terrific. Yeah, and you mentioned the modular system. I noted, I think I might have mentioned it to you, the video that you put together to show the modularity of the system on your website. Really, really impressive.
Yeah, and it's actually a cue from, what we've seen with other manufacturers doing it, but we can do it in a way where all the components are all BOBST components. We don't have to have our partners having this portion, that portion. It's really all BOBST components. So you have one person to go to for everything, and we support it very well for that.
Yeah, and just with the clients that we work with, that's often a real obstacle to success, is the fact that some manufacturers have to put together multiple brands of products and try and link them together with software. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the teams. If you've got a good team that's cohesive, that they work it well. But if you've got a team that has issues on one end and the other, sometimes you get into finger pointing.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have done it well across the board. This has been great. Talk a little bit about where folks can find you at the shows as well as reach you individually.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm on, like everybody, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I actually will be at the Printing United show. I'll be there for one day. I'll be attending a lot of the events that we have going around. And I reside in New Hampshire. So I'm in the Northeast, but the short time I've been back, I've been doing a lot of traveling. So I really find it very important to go out and meet people and see customers. And you have to be accessible. I think there was a time that we all had the COVID and we work remotely. We do, our Teams meetings, and we do that very well. But I still like face-to-face meeting people, seeing people's facilities. So I'm just a phone call or an email away, or whatever method you want to contact. I try to be very accessible to everybody.
And we both agree that communication's extremely important. So I've done a great job of being able to forward a lot of emails on to Harold, so he can follow up on that.
Yeah, and my motto has been, a 2 or 3 minute phone call saves 3 or 4 hours of emails.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
I have a friend who calls that leaf blower management. We're going to blow it off my desk onto yours, and that works out pretty well for some people. So.
Oh, Harold, you may hear that term again.
Yep.
Well, guys, this was a blast, and I appreciate you coming to see us live here in the office and getting on the Think Factory podcast. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having us. And actually, I got to say, I look forward to doing this again, too. And, I think Doug and I make a good tag team. I'd enjoy doing this again with Doug together. So
yeah, we'll go to the Poconos in the summertime, too, and do some stuff.
No problem.
On the Borscht Belt, I think.
Sounds great.
That was great. No, you guys were fantastic, and collectively a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom about the industry, and so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you
especially
very
with an
much.
impressive company like BOBST. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thank you
pleasure.
very much. We appreciate it.
Well, signing off for today, this is Chris Santomassimo from OGC Solutions on the Think Factory podcast, and we'll see you next time.